Have you ever stood in front of a famous artwork, maybe in a quiet, echoing museum, and just felt absolutely nothing?
Oh, I think everyone has at some point.
Right. You're looking at it, and it's supposed to be a masterpiece. I mean, the plaque right there on the wall says it's a masterpiece.
But secretly, deep down, you're terrified that you just don't know how to appreciate it.
Exactly. You're waiting for that magical spark of inspiration, and instead you're just wondering what you're going to have for lunch. Or, maybe it's staring at a wildly popular piece of digital art on your phone, seeing millions of likes, and thinking, I just don't get it.
It's a remarkably common anxiety.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive, where we're going to completely relieve you of that pressure.
We really are, because
Yeah.
we often approach visual art like it's a high-stakes math test with a single hidden correct answer that we're somehow failing to find.
Yeah, like there's a secret code.
Right. But the sources we're looking at today suggest that the problem isn't your artistic taste, and it's certainly not a lack of intelligence. The problem is that we rarely think about the invisible social architecture that dictates exactly how we're looking at things in the first place.
Which brings us to our material. We're pulling from a really insightful review and analysis of a truly groundbreaking work today, John Berger's Ways of Seeing.
Such an influential text.
It really is. It actually originated as a BBC television series back in 1972 before becoming a book, and it fundamentally changed how people talk about visual culture.
It shifted the entire paradigm.
So our mission today isn't to give you a stuffy crash course in art history. We aren't going to tell you the right way to look at a painting. Instead, we're going to uncover the hidden mechanisms that shape your perspective.
And to set the foundation for this, we have to understand a basic premise of human perception. We interpret things before we even fully understand them.
That happens instantly, right?
The very moment your eyes land on an object, your brain is already weaving a narrative based on your past experiences. And when you try to explain or talk about what you've just seen, you aren't actually communicating the raw visual data of the object.
You're communicating your interpretation of it.
Exactly. The act of seeing is never entirely innocent or purely objective.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if what we're communicating is always just an interpretation, that means our perspectives aren't just a matter of personal, isolated taste.
Far from it.
They're heavily constructed by the world around us. Our language, our education systems, the media we consume, they all build the lens through which we view the world.
Precisely. The text breaks this down into four major themes, starting with the very nature of images.
Right, the image itself.
We tend to think of an image as just a record of something, like a visual receipt. But an image is not merely what is visible, it's what is shown.
That's a crucial distinction.
It is. An image is a relationship. It's an intentional record of how the creator, with their own subjective perspective, chose to capture a subject and how they intended you, the viewer, to interact with it.
It's a curated viewpoint. And what blows my mind is how much of that original relationship gets completely lost in our modern way of viewing things. I mean, we look at art on screens, in books, on posters, completely divorced from where it started.
What's fascinating here is how understanding this relationship reveals exactly what we lose in the modern era of constant visual reproduction.
We lose the context.
Entirely. When an image is endlessly copied and separated from its original home, the intended relationship between the creator, the image, and the viewer is severed.
The sources bring up a really famous painting to prove this point, Raphael's School of Athens. I've seen this on coffee mugs. I've seen it on dorm room posters. And it always just looks like a bunch of great philosophers hanging out together. But the text implies we're totally missing the point when we look at it that way.
Yeah.
What was the actual original context?
Well, that fresco was designed specifically for the architectural context of the Vatican. It was painted directly onto the wall of a room that served as a private library for the Pope.
Oh, wow. So not a coffee mug.
Definitely not. The archways painted in the fresco were mathematically designed to echo the actual architectural arches of the room itself. It was meant to be viewed by specific people in a specific environment of immense religious and political power, surrounded by specific books of theology and philosophy.
The painting was in conversation with the room.
Exactly. It wasn't just an image, it was a physical extension of that space.
But today, you type School of Athens into an internet search, and that vital architectural and historical context is entirely stripped away. You're viewing an isolated floating image.
It becomes just a piece of data.
It's like taking a single sentence out of a massive, complex novel and trying to judge the entire plot by it.
That's a great analogy. The takeaway for you, the listener, is that to truly see a work, To engage with it the way it was meant to be engaged with, you have to mentally reconstruct the conditions and the place in which it was originally situated. To see the work is to see the conditions of the work.
We absolutely see this today with contemporary and digital art too.
Oh, all the time.
Imagine an immersive, interactive digital light installation in a massive dark warehouse designed to respond to the movement and body heat of a crowd. It's an entire physical, bodily experience.
Right, you have to be there.
But if you watch a compressed 10-second video clip of that installation on your social media feed while sitting on the bus, you aren't really seeing the art. You're seeing a flattened, decontextualized ghost of it. The environment is gone.
That's a perfect modern translation. The medium changes, but the loss of context is identical.
Now, if we lose the environment of art when it's put on a screen or a page, what happens when the subject of the art is an actual person?
This is where things get really challenging.
The sources spend a lot of time on the traditional Western nude, and I'll be honest, it completely flipped my perspective. But wait, aren't classical nudes just meant to be celebrations of human anatomy? Like, how is a classical nude different from just a portrait of someone without clothes?
It's a great question, and it's where the text challenges our most basic assumptions. Historically, art history has treated the nude as a pure celebration of the human form, a kind of natural ideal.
Right, that's what we're taught.
But the sources argue that in the tradition of the European nude, women were rarely constructed as the subjects who were doing the looking. Instead, they were almost exclusively constructed as the objects being looked at.
So being naked is just being without clothes. You're just existing in your natural state. But being nude, in this historical context, is a highly staged presentation.
It's a performance for an audience.
A performance.
Exactly. The text argues that the nude acts as a kind of costume. It's a costume because it assumes a gaze. The subject is arranged specifically to be appealing, available, and passive for an external spectator, historically, a wealthy male patron who commissioned the work.
Why this matters is that when you look at these classical nudes, you aren't just admiring human anatomy. You're looking at a crystallized arrangement of power and societal norms.
You're seeing a visual representation of who holds the power to look and who is subjected to being looked at.
This sounds exactly like the influencer aesthetic we see on social media today.
It really does.
People post these incredibly elaborate, seemingly candid photos of themselves lounging on a beach or getting out of a pool. But it isn't candid at all. It took 40 takes, specific lighting, and careful posing.
They're highly produced images.
They're contorting their bodies to look a certain way for the lens, adopting the costume of the objectified gaze for their followers. The medium has changed from oil paint to pixels, but the social condition of assuming the gaze of performing for an invisible spectator remains exactly the same.
That's a very astute modern parallel. It's the internalization of the spectator. The person being photographed is simultaneously the surveyor and the surveyed. They're constantly monitoring how they appear to others, which is exactly the dynamic Berger identified in those centuries-old paintings.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text then shifts from the power dynamics of the human body to the power dynamics of material wealth. It dives deep into oil painting.
Yes, the medium itself.
And we aren't just talking about the chemical composition of the paint.
Yeah.
The argument here is that oil painting, as a specific medium, became the ultimate visual expression of ownership.
It did. Oil painting was uniquely suited to mimic reality in a way previous mediums like tempera or fresco simply couldn't.
Because of the depth and texture.
Exactly. It captures the precise texture, the weight, and the gloss of expensive items. It could replicate the sheen of a silk dress, the reflection on a gold goblet, or the rich mahogany of a massive estate. It wasn't just about making a pretty picture, it was about inventory.
Inventory. I love that word for this.
It was a highly sophisticated way for the wealthy to catalog and display what they owned.
The sources mention this concept of surrogate possession, which is such a brilliant psychological trick. Can we unpack that? Because the hyper-realistic gloss of oil paint gives the viewer the distinct feeling of possessing those expensive objects.
Right. If you were wealthy enough to commission the painting, it served as concrete proof of your wealth, your lineage, and your power. You could hang it on your wall to say, look at all the incredible things I own.
A giant flex.
A huge flex. It was a visual reinforcement of the social hierarchy. But for the rest of society, looking at these paintings provided a cheap illusion of ownership. It allowed them to participate in the visual fantasy of wealth without actually possessing any of it. It's a surrogate possession.
It's like following a tech billionaire's yacht vacation on social media today. I get a weird, cheap thrill looking at the drone shots of the yacht and the private chef's meals. It feels like I'm participating in that luxury for a few seconds.
You feel like you're there.
But ultimately, it just serves as concrete proof that they have immense wealth, and I'm sitting on my couch eating a frozen pizza. It reinforces the hierarchy while giving me a tiny, hollow taste of the aesthetic.
That is precisely the mechanism at work. However, the sources add a crucial nuance here regarding the evolution of the artist within this system.
Right, because the artists weren't just robots.
No, painting wasn't just a stagnant factory of wealth signaling. To become an independent, respected painter meant you first had to learn this established visual language. You had to master the techniques of depicting wealth and adopting the inherited gaze of the era.
But to truly leave a mark, to become a master in their own right, the artist eventually had to rebel against it. They couldn't just be an inventory clerk forever.
Exactly. They had to reach a point where they rejected that inherited gaze. They started painting the harsh realities of life, or abstracting forms, pushing against the very system that trained them.
The perspective shifts.
Even a single artist's perspective changes over their lifetime. Their early work might perfectly align with societal norms, painting the grand estates and the silk dresses, while their later work completely deconstructs those norms. Perspective is always in motion, even for the creators.
So what does this all mean for us today? I mean, we don't exactly have lords and ladies commissioning massive oil paintings of their fruit bowls and hunting dogs anymore. How does this historical analysis connect to your modern everyday life?
It connects directly to what we look at most.
Well, that brings us to the final and honestly most mind-blowing theme from the text: advertising.
This is where Berger's insights from the 1970s become incredibly prophetic. Advertising is the modern evolution of these visual traditions, but with a critical twist. The true purpose of a modern advertisement isn't actually to explain the functional details of a product.
It's so true. Nobody buys a luxury car because the commercial gave a detailed engineering breakdown of the transmission.
No, they don't care about the transmission.
They buy it because of the guy driving the car through the winding mountain road, looking incredibly suave.
Right. The purpose is to make you, the viewer, imagine an attractive me. The ad presents an idealized version of who you could be, how you could look, or how others would perceive you if only you possess this product.
I totally fell for this last week. I was perfectly happy scrolling on my phone, and suddenly I see an ad for a $150 ergonomic neck pillow.
Oh no!
And the guy in the ad looks so rested, so peaceful, so successful. Suddenly I'm convinced my neck is in agonizing pain, my sleep is terrible, and my life is a mess without this specific piece of foam.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text draws a brilliant contrast between the oil paintings of the past and the advertisements of today. Oil paintings were all about praising ownership that already existed.
Right, the stuff they already had.
They were a celebration of the present. I am rich, here are my things, admire my current status, but advertising is entirely different. Advertising is meticulously designed to make you desire ownership of things you don't have. It's entirely focused on the future.
And the psychological trick it uses to get you there is the structure of comparison. Ads create a relentless, inescapable environment of comparison.
Yeah.
They make you look at your current everyday self, your life, your body, your belongings, and feel a distinct sense of lack.
That's the key word, lack.
Advertising successfully manufactures the anxiety of non-ownership. It tells you that without this product, you are incomplete.
It's a brilliant, if insidious, social architecture. It utilizes the same visual strategies of staging, the assumed gaze, and the illusion of possession that have existed for centuries, but it optimizes them for mass consumption and perpetual dissatisfaction.
It's literally everywhere. Think about targeted social media ads or beauty filters on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. You're scrolling through your feed, perfectly content with your face, and suddenly you see an influencer promoting a skincare routine using a subtle filter that alters their bone structure to fit a hyper-specific societal norm.
A norm that isn't even real.
Exactly. In that split second, a gap is created. The ad manufactures a flaw you didn't even know you had. Maybe your jawline isn't sharp enough, or your pores are too visible, and then conveniently offers to sell you the serum that cures the exact anxiety you just created. You're being sold the attractive me, and the price you pay is feeling inadequate in the present.
And that realization is the core value of engaging with this material. Which brings us to the overarching thesis of our dive today. The author of the original book isn't trying to force a new set of rigid rules on you. They aren't saying, you're looking at art wrong, here is the manual.
No manual here.
Instead, the sources reveal the hidden mechanisms of how our perspectives are formed, reproduced, and monetized.
Having a different perspective on the same artwork, or even a different reaction to a billboard, isn't a failure to understand it. It's exactly what makes examining visual culture so incredibly valuable. The ultimate goal isn't to find the right answer. It's simply to pause and ask yourself, why am I interpreting it this way? Who taught me to see it like this?
This raises an important question about our own role in this ongoing chain. Think about the layers of interpretation happening right now. You have the artist's original view, John Berger's interpretation of that art in the 1970s, the modern review of his book that serves as our source material today, and now this very deep dive where we're interpreting that review for you.
Layers on layers.
They're all just an endless chain of different evolving interpretations.
And that's empowering. It means you have the agency to break the chain, or at least understand how it's pulling you. To help you put this into practice immediately, we want to leave you with a simple 3-step framework. You can use this the next time you encounter an advertisement, whether it's a glossy magazine page, a video ad before a show, or a sponsored post on your social feed.
Step 1. Identify the attractive me. When you look at the ad, consciously ignore the product for a second. Look at the person in the ad or the lifestyle being portrayed. What idealized future version of yourself is this image trying to get you to imagine? Are they selling you sophistication, ruggedness, peace of mind?
Step 2. Spot the manufactured lack. Ask yourself, what specific insecurity or feeling of inadequacy is this image trying to trigger in my present self? How is it trying to make you feel like you're missing out or falling behind by not having this?
And step 3. Recognize the assumed gaze. Who is the invisible spectator this ad is performing for? Is it trying to make you desirable to a partner? Envied by your peers, approved of by society at large? Once you consciously apply this framework, the illusion often loses its power over you.
You move from being a passive consumer of images, just letting them wash over you, to an active critic of the social conditions that create them. You begin to actually see the world, rather than just looking at it.
It's the difference between wandering through a maze blindfolded and suddenly being handed the blueprint of the maze.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over today as you go about your week. We've talked a lot about the gaze, the context of images, and how advertising manufacturers desire. Think about your own digital footprint.
This is where it gets real.
The next time you take a photo on your phone to share online, maybe your dinner, a vacation sunset, or a selfie in the mirror, pause for just a second. Ask yourself, are you capturing reality exactly as you actually see it in that moment? Or are you automatically framing your own life to fit the expected gaze of your followers, turning your everyday real existence into a highly curated advertisement for yourself?
It's a question that brings the historical architecture of sight right into the palm of your modern hand.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning what you see.